Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be around the world, and welcome to another Agency Success live stream from Hosting.com. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the Agency Success Trainer here with Hosting.com. So glad you are here today because we're talking about something very, very important, and that is the Agency Success Hosting Blueprint. So earlier this month, we talked about the power of recurring revenue and how building a reliable stream of recurring revenue in your agency is really the key to success. And that's where we're going to start today, but we're going to specifically dive in on how do we include hosting as part of that recurring revenue plan. It's something I've been doing for many years in my agency, and I've been a Hosting.com customer long before I was the person doing live streams here. So really happy to unpack for you how I manage hosting through Hosting.com products for my clients and sharing with you options and some little tidbits that I've learned along the way. So again, if you're just joining us in Zoom, we invite you to open up the chat and say hello. I'm dropping in a bundle of links. There was some questions in the pre-show that I will mention here. We record all of these and they go on YouTube playlists. And so if you would like to access those, you can go to hosting.com on YouTube, just search for hosting.com. You'll see our agency success replays, or you can simply go to replays.myagencysuccess.com, and that will give you all of the playlist for all of our most recent replays of these live streams. So please do that. We have a lot of great content that's building all the time. So if you would like to download the guide, which you're seeing on your screen now, I'm going to drop in that link once again there in the chat. You can also get all of the downloads for all of our agency success live streams at downloads.myagencysuccess.com. And that'll open up a Google Drive that has all the things that we've shared in these agency success live streams. So make use of that. Those resources are there for your use. All right, so this is a PDF doc. I chose not to do a slide deck today because we'll be going back and forth in a browser window looking at the control panels for Rocket.net and for the virtual dedicated server that is our demo for today. And so that's easier to do if there's just a PDF sitting here rather than a slide deck. So it's also, I think, easier for you to follow along. So this is really building off of the live stream that we did earlier this month called The Power of Recurring Revenue. Let me make this a little bit larger so it's easier for you to see. Hopefully you've downloaded this guide as well. But if you missed that replay, you can watch it right there. The link is right there in the doc. And this was one of the most important topics that I usually talk about with people that I'm coaching or people running agencies. Recurring revenue is absolutely critical. We have to have this as part of our agency because otherwise we're living project to project and we're completely dependent on sales for survival. We have to have new clients coming in all the time to feed the beast so that we can get paid. And then also at the same time, we're at the client's mercy to supply the assets and approvals that we need to launch the site and get paid. And we end up working without a safety net. It's a really difficult way to run a business if we're not laser focused on building that recurring revenue. Now, we spent an hour unpacking that topic. And again, if you missed that replay, you can go back and rewatch it right there at this link in the guide. Now, where we left off sort of in that conversation about recurring revenue is that WordPress care plans, if you're an agency building WordPress websites for clients, WordPress care plans are the place to start when you're thinking about getting into building more recurring revenue in your business. Because every website needs hosting. Every WordPress website needs care after it launches. And so it's a natural way to start growing recurring revenue in your business. I started doing this back in 2009 when I was just moving into WordPress and pivoting my whole business model from a few clients with large monthly retainers. There's nothing wrong with that. But I pivoted to many more clients with smaller website care plans, and that has been the foundation of the success of my agency. And so last time we also talked about our care plans through this framework, what I call the elements of an effective care plan. And you can meet each of these 4 elements in many different ways, but each of these 4 need to be present in an effective WordPress care plan. Hosting, WordPress updates, backups, and security. So the acronym there is HUBS, HUBS, and those are the elements that need to be part of every effective care plan. Now, we're focusing today especially on the hosting piece, but as we look at the two different options for hosting that I'll be describing, both managed WordPress hosting with Rocket.net and with virtual dedicated and virtual private servers through hosting.com, I'll be showing you how each of those options fit into this 4-element framework. And it's really important. I think as I have had coaching conversations with freelancers, solopreneurs, agency owners, however you label yourself, I've been having, for the last 10 years, coaching conversations with folks that do what we do. We build and manage WordPress sites for clients. It is very normal for me to find someone who is either not offering hosting at all as part of their care plan, or they're offering the wrong kind of hosting. They might be paying too much for what they're getting or too little for what they really need. And it's just not a great fit. It's not being done well. And so what I want to do in this next hour is just kind of show you what I do and maybe even walk through a decision tree of how should I build hosting as an offering in my agency. And so just a few things to consider if you're thinking about, or maybe there's some internal pushback about should I offer hosting to my clients as part of a care plan. There are many folks that I've coached and worked with and spoken with who just, they refer the hosting business to a hosting company. Maybe there's even a little affiliate kickback there for, like a one-time payment or whatever. And that's okay, but I think there's a better way to do it. And there's a few reasons I think that you should consider that would lead you toward offering hosting as part of your care plan. And the first is that consistency equals efficiency. So if you control the environment in which all of your websites are hosted, they're on your server, or they're with one company, or they're with, they're in an environment that there's no surprises, you know what to expect. You don't have to learn some other host's weird control panel or whatever. You're going to be more productive, and it's going to be easier to scale how many sites you can manage if that hosting solution stays consistent, right? So consistency equals efficiency. Second of all, bundling hosting in your care plans is going to allow you to grow your profits. You can raise your prices in your care plans if you're bundling hosting. So it's going to make you more money. Every website has to be hosted. So why not capitalize on the relationship that you've built with the client and provide that service to the client rather than giving that to another company to benefit from? And last of all, and this is probably the most important thing, clients who hire a web professional to build a website, they've hired you because they don't want to get into the details. And the reason that clients have a website care plan is so that they don't have to fiddle with all the details of managing the website. They just, it's worth, $100, $200, however much you're charging for your care plan. It's worth it to the client for you just to handle the website so they can handle their business. And as a result of that, it's not as good a fit for a client if you make them go choose hosting and they've got to buy the hosting. Just offer a one, silver bullet solution for this is going to take care of everything related to your site staying alive and well-managed and healthy for years to come. Your clients then have a single contact for everything that might go wrong for the website. There's no blame game between you and another host or whatever. And look, here's the thing. Even if you are sending hosting business elsewhere and you're not offering hosting as part of your care plan, your client's going to call you anyway. So why not benefit from making a little extra money for hosting the site as part of your care plan? Anyway, that's kind of where we left off in the last live stream. So let's talk about choosing the right hosting options. Now, there's a couple of different types of two buckets of options, if you will, when it comes to hosting.com. Hosting.com itself for agencies, solopreneurs managing clients with WordPress sites. Two great options: virtual private server, virtual dedicated server. And then also recently, Rocket.net has become part of the hosting.com family of products. And so now there's managed hosting for WordPress powered by Rocket.net. And each of these solutions might be a great option for you depending on certain things. And so, how do you decide what kind of hosting is going to be best for you? So, I would say the best option for you will depend on two main factors. First of all, what are your preferences as a business? And two, how much profit do you want to make on the hosting? I see some really great questions coming in the chat. And that reminds me, I neglected to tell you to please ask questions in the Zoom Q&A. You can get to that by hovering over the shared screen, clicking the Q&A button, and that will allow you to ask questions. And we'll take those questions at the end in the order of upvotes they received. So you can also keep that Q&A window open. And if someone asks a question that you also have, you can click the thumbs up icon and we'll take those questions in the order of upvotes at the end. All right, so your preference as a business and the profits that you want to make on hosting. So here's just a quick decision tree. What are your preferences? Well, if you don't mind learning a little tech, if it means you get to customize some things to be the way you like them, you might lean more toward hosting.com. If you want the option to customize how everything works, like the frequency of backups, offsite storage, having your own Cloudflare settings, if you use Cloudflare for your DNS, or firewall rules, that sort of thing. If you like to customize those things and get it just like you like it, then you might lean more toward hosting.com because the virtual private servers, the virtual dedicated servers allow you the flexibility to do that. Over here on the rocket.net side, if you just want things to work, right, and you want exceptional support if there's a problem, that's going to push you more toward the rocket.net side. If you want white glove concierge level service and you're willing to trade maybe a little control over customization for that convenience, that's more the managed WordPress hosting by rocket.net. Does that make sense? So the hosting.com servers give you more customization. The WP Rocket offering gives you exceptional support. It's just simple. You just put it in there and it works. Another thing to consider here is your profits. If you have a VPS or a VDS through hosting.com, it's going to be lower cost per site, right? Because you can stack a bunch of sites in your server and your monthly cost doesn't go up any, right? Like you can just stack those sites and keep going as long as your server has good enough hardware to support what those sites need. You know, we have 100 plus sites, typically on our server, and it's great. It works fine. No issues whatsoever. And we can add more. Our cost doesn't go up at all. And it's all profit at that point. Now, so you get a higher profit margin as a result of this. Now, if you move toward a managed hosting, it's going to be a per site cost. So there's a higher per site cost. Every site you add is going to cost maybe a little bit more. So that does lower your profit margin unless you increase your care plan price accordingly, right? So one of the things you might consider, especially if you've done the VPS, VDS hosting route in the past, you might think about some sort of a hybrid solution. And by that, I mean host what we might call typical websites on a lower cost VPS or VDS with hosting.com. And if you have a special website that for some reason needs higher level of, more white glove treatment, more, this is like a mission critical type website, maybe that could be over as a rocket.net type site. That's the way we're looking at changing, some of the sites that we manage into that framework. So there'll be a premium level hosting with rocket.net that will offer some of our sites that might benefit from things like that. So, sites that are SEO competitive and really need lightning fast speed, we get great speed on our VDS with hosting.com. But if you want the next level up, because rocket.net, as we'll see in a minute, offers Cloudflare Enterprise rolled into the deal, it's very fast. And so moving those types of sites into a premium hosting package powered by rocket.net might make sense, and the price would increase accordingly. So does this make sense just sort of as a decision tree? Do I want more customizability or do I just want it handled? Do I want to make more profits or am I okay with a premium level, premium price hosting? That's kind of the place where that's the ledge where you go on one side or the other. So great questions are coming in. Let me just remind everybody, if you have a question, please use the Q&A in Zoom. All right. So let's unpack just for a minute managed hosting for WordPress powered by Rocket.net. So if you didn't know this already, the brilliance of Rocket.net, which is now part of the Hosting.com family of products, the brilliance of Rocket.net is that it is basically WordPress-specific hosting wrapped in Cloudflare Enterprise. Now, Cloudflare Enterprise is very expensive, but you don't see that cost when you're going through Rocket.net. You get all the benefits that Cloudflare Enterprise provides with security and caching and alt speed, all sorts of things, but it's just built in to Rocket.net, and it just works. There's no fiddling with settings and whatever. It just works. So that includes the Cloudflare Enterprise Firewall, and so you don't have to go in and manage WAF rules, the security rules in Cloudflare. That's become very popular recently in a lot of WordPress management platforms. Move your DNS to Cloudflare. I've taught courses on it, but there's so many settings. And if you've been in the past in some of my sessions about Cloudflare, it is really quick to, overwhelm can happen quickly unless you feel comfortable getting into the nitty gritty with those sites. So this is all, you just put your site into Rocket.net and all of those, all the best settings are pre-configured for you for security and also for speed, because Cloudflare Enterprise caching is like a completely different caching system than the basic free Cloudflare caching. It is much faster. It includes Argo Smart Routing, which is very quick. It includes image resizing and other things. So there's no need to get into all those Cloudflare settings. You just, once you add your site to Rocket.net, it just works. They also are including the WP Rocket Premium caching plugin for every site at no additional cost. Free and unlimited migrations for all WordPress sites into Rocket.net. And I'll tell you this, when they set me up a demo account for Rocket.net, I moved my nathaningram.com website into Rocket.net. While I was on the chat with the person right there in the dashboard, I was just asking questions about migration. He had me answer a few questions, and 5 minutes later, the site was there in Rocket.net ready to go. It was incredibly simple. I was blown away by how simple that migration process was. And they do offer 24/7 live chat and email support. And I'll show you that when we get to their dashboard in just a minute. Okay. With WordPress updates, again, we're looking at each of these options through the lens of the 4 elements, right? HUBS. So hosting, we've talked about that with Rocket.net. Now, how do WordPress updates work with Rocket? They do support automatic core theme plugin updates, but no, site errors aren't monitored other than, if something breaks and you get the WordPress email, hey, a critical error on your site, whatever. So I don't turn on automatic updates. I'm not quite that brave. However, with Rocket.net, you can bring your own dashboard. So whatever you're already using, hopefully you have some sort of multi-site management dashboard, Manage WP, Main WP, all the others. You can bring your own dashboard. It works fine. No issues with WordPress updates. When it comes to backups, Rocket.net does give you an automatic daily backup and retains them for 14 days as part of the normal plan. You can also create up to 3 on-demand manual backups that will be there for 24 hours that you can download and whatnot. And they don't restrict the addition. This is a really important, really important piece because many managed WordPress hosts restrict certain types of plugins from their hosting environment. And backup plugins are among those that they generally restrict. Rocket.net does not restrict WordPress backup plugins. So if you have, a backup plugin that you like, that's a WordPress level backup, you can add it, no problem at all. All right, how about security? So in addition to the Cloudflare Enterprise DNS level, network level security that's included as part of Rocket.net's hosting, they also use Immunify 360 at the server level for malware scanning. Now, what this does, if you've not yet seen Immunify 360, you can Google it real quick. It's a very widely used and accepted product. It's very good. It's real-time malware scanning on your server. Like it's watching all the PHP processes. It's looking for malware in your files. It does file level scans. At the operating system level, not at the WordPress level. And that's key. There are WordPress security plugins that want to do file level malware scanning as a WordPress plugin, and that's the wrong way to do it. It's resource heavy. It can be fooled easily by malware. So you want that done at the server level, and that's what Immunify 360 does. So it's going to stop known or unknown malicious code. And matter of fact, if you bring a site into Rocket.net that has infected files, Immunify 360 is going to clean it up. It's pretty cool. So strong security out of the box without you having to do really anything at all with Rocket.net. So great deal with Rocket.net, $1 for the first month. You can try it out, right? You can even have them migrate a site in, let it be, kind of on a subdomain to test it out, see how it works, and just use one of those fast migrations like I talked about. It just costs $1 to try it. And by the way, we're calling this Managed Hosting for WordPress by Rocket.net. And yes, I realize that is a mouthful. That's where you find it here on the hosting.com site. So under WordPress, there is Managed Hosting for WordPress right here. And this is Rocket.net. Now, you might wonder, why should I go through that instead of just going straight to Rocket.net? Is there any difference? And there's no difference in the hosting. You still get a Rocket.net dashboard and all of this, but there are some very important reasons that you might want to go through the hosting.com avenue. First, you'll get a single hosting.com dashboard that has everything else in it if you want to take advantage of other hosting.com offers, like hosting.com email, which is quite good. But most importantly, you get Mike Demo as your agency advocate, which means you go through Demo. He's going to help you figure out the best solution. If you've been around WordPress or WordCamps at WordPress events, you might have met Mike Demo before. He's been around our community for a long time. Incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly helpful. I've known him for 10 plus years, and he's a good personal friend. So Mike will be your agency advocate. You talk to him, he'll help you figure out a solution, whether it's Rocket.net or a server at hosting.com or some combination of those two. And he will, if you have issues, you can talk to Demo directly after the fact, and he'll help you sort those out. So most importantly, perhaps, though, is by going through this direction through the hosting.com site with Managed Hosting for WordPress powered by Rocket.net, you're supporting the work that we do here at Agency Success to provide helpful educational content in my office hours every week. So there's a quick link to the Managed Hosting for WordPress powered by Rocket.net, which is, yeah, it's a mouthful. Rocket.myagencysuccess.com, or just reach out to Mike Demo. This is his phone number. You can get directly to him right there. So that's the Rocket.net option. That's a brand new thing for us at hosting.com. That's only happened here in the last couple of months, and we're thrilled to have Rocket.net as part of the hosting.com family. So let me just quickly show you what this dashboard looks like. So here is the Rocket.net dashboard. It is very simple. You see, I've got a couple of sites in here, my own personal NathanIngram.com and this demo site, wp1.dev. Now, it's a super clean dashboard. If you have support tickets, they're open right here. Platform announcements over here, straightforward. The search is great. If you have a bunch of sites on here, you can quickly get to the site that you want. And right here, I'm just going to dig into the details on wp1.dev. Now, a few things that you'll see right away. You can go right to the website, which is nice. You can rename what it's called if you want to do that. Right here, this clear cache button is super important because this clears all the caches, all the Cloudflare caches, server level caches. It clears all of it in case there's some, you run into some issue. You can go straight to your WP admin here. And I love this little notice because if you have created a staging site, it's a really good reminder that you are in the production environment currently. So make sure you don't goof anything up that you're going to regret. So that's really helpful. Creating a staging site is very easy. You just click this button and it's going to run through the process of immediately creating the staging site for you. So if you want to test something or build something or whatnot, we'll let it do its thing. It takes a minute or two. And we'll go to some of these other options under here. So we have our activity monitor here and details about the site and connection. You have access to your WordPress plugins and themes. You can also search for and install plugins right here if you want. There's your file manager here that lets you navigate through and edit files just like you would in another file management app or program. Your backups are here. This is a demo backup I created a little bit earlier. This cloud backup, which I can restore. Whoop, there went the staging site or download. See, that just took, what, a minute or so to create the staging site. Now we have access to that. So that's helpful. So here's all of our backups that have been running on a daily basis. You see those, and restoring them is just as simple as clicking the button there if you've got something to roll back. You do have access to logs of what's been going on here in the on the site. A great point from Melanie. You don't usually get a file manager in a managed WordPress environment. So this is definitely an outlier, and it's helpful. I like it. Okay, a couple other things here. This is an interesting thing. So you have the ability to lock the site. And what this means is if your site doesn't get a bunch of updates, then you could lock the site and it's not accessible from like the admin side. It just locks everything down. Now, you wouldn't want to do this if you have a form plugin, for example, that records entries to the database. But if your form plugin is just sending emails, then you could totally lock the site down. It locks down database writing to the file structure. It makes it almost like a flat site. So security is now zero issue because everything is literally locked down. A few other things here that are interesting. You do get access to PHPMyAdmin right from here. This is really great. If you play around with WP CLI at all, you just click the button, you get a terminal right here to talk to the site with WP CLI. Here's your PHP version. You can choose how you're going to update WordPress. So all those things are here. Are we doing auto updates or not? If you need SSH keys, you can generate them here. So this is it. That's all that's needed for the site. Everything you need is right here. It's super simple. And if you need help, look at this. We just click this button right here, and we can start a chat with Enrique about something going on our site. And the response time is almost immediate. And all of these support agents that I've interacted with are incredibly knowledgeable. So that is Rocket.net. Does it do SFTP? It does through an SSH key. So you would set up an SSH key so that your SFTP app could connect. All right. So I may not have all the specific answers to things like, is there a file count limit? I have no idea. That would be a great question to ask the Rocket.net support and put them to the test, because you can ask the support people from the front end of the website. Just have a quick chat and see what they say. So I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think it is, because they also don't monitor bandwidth on your sites. That's something that is very different than other managed WordPress hosts. Rocket.net does not monitor bandwidth. So pretty amazing. All right, so we need to move along here just for the sake of time, and I'm sure we'll have some very healthy questions and answers at the end. But let's turn our attention to the virtual server offerings that Hosting.com offers. Now, Hosting.com offers two different flavors of virtual servers. There's a virtual private server, which is a less expensive option, and a virtual dedicated server, which is a little more expensive. The main differences between these two are the resource levels, right? The virtual dedicated servers have more resources than the VPS. That's essentially the main practical reason. There are some other architectural differences that, if you have questions about that, we can talk about it. But all of this is built on Hosting.com's latest high-performance infrastructure. Now, this is key, because for years, I have always hosted on a dedicated server with some hosting partner, right? I just moved into a Hosting.com virtual dedicated server from an A2 hosting dedicated server. A2 hosting became Hosting.com. So I've been in a dedicated server forever. And what will usually happen is every couple, 2-3 years or so, you got to move all your sites to another server. But this is different, because the infrastructure that these virtual private servers and virtual dedicated servers are built on, Hosting.com is upgrading that infrastructure on a regular cycle, meaning that I might never have to move my server again. And it just keeps getting better hardware as they upgrade the infrastructure. As I was talking to Mike Demo about this, he said that it's refreshed on a regular cycle, and the VPS and VDS servers get the first upgrades when those things happen. And it's transparent. It's not going to affect your sites. You don't have to do anything. Your hardware just gets automatically upgraded as they start to improve the infrastructure with newer offerings. Pretty amazing. It is a Lightspeed server, which is gobs faster than Apache or Nginx or any of the other web servers that are out there. It is incredibly fast, and it's an industry standard WHM cPanel environment. They also do offer site quality monitoring with cPanel's Quality. It's a clever name. And it's just from the cPanel of every site, you can monitor uptime, page load speed, broken links, SEO metrics. You just set it up and it runs, and it's included free. They do offer 24/7 phone, chat, and ticket support with Hosting.com. And we've interacted quite a bit with Hosting.com support for various questions throughout our migration and other things. And the support has been good. Now, this is one thing I want to spend a minute on. This live migration, okay? So if you have ever gone through the, the bloodletting, I'll call it, of moving from one host to another, it is like it's gonna eat a week of your time, right? Like I've got 50 sites, 80 sites, 200 sites at some host, and I got to get those over to some other host. So I got to move every site. And I can't let maybe the host offers migrations, but they're not going to like update the DNS. Like we still have to do that, and it's just a problem. Let me tell you about this live migration that Hosting.com did for us. Okay. If you are already in, for example, a WHM cPanel server somewhere, or if you have, shared hosting or something, as long as it's cPanel, the migrations team can get access to this. And this is how it worked for us. Okay. They migrated all of our cPanels over from one server to the other. It just went over. And as soon as that cPanel on the old server was moved, traffic was redirected to the new server without us having to change DNS. It's like a temporary redirect that was put in place so that immediately those e-commerce sites, for example, that they moved over, all the traffic's now flowing to the new server. We didn't have to do anything for that. It just worked. And then over the course of the next couple of days, we just gradually at our leisure went in and updated the DNS to change the IP address to the new server. But the traffic was already going there because of the internal redirect. It was so simple. I've never had a migration experience that was that simple, aside from when the guy in the rocket.net chat just pulled the site in for me. It was amazing. Literally 100 sites. We woke up last Monday morning, and in the matter of a few hours, we just moved the IP addresses over. Done. Yeah, interesting, right? So that is, they offer those free live migrations. And if you are an agency, they don't offer this to the general public, okay? But if you are an agency, meaning you have a bunch of client sites, not that you're multiple people, but if you're a solopreneur freelancer and you've got a bunch of sites, this means you. They will, even if you're in a non-cPanel host, migrate you over at no cost. Pretty amazing. So it's good quality hardware, and the way they manage everything is smart. And they manage all of the updates, like the server software updates. All that's managed under the virtual private and virtual dedicated server offerings. All right, well, let's talk about WordPress updates. So how do you deal with WordPress updates in this, in your own server kind of a system? Well, you bring your own dashboard. You're likely using one already anyway. Manage WP, main WP, fill in the blank. And it's going to work just like it always has, right? But there's also this incredible little tool that we'll get to in a little bit. If you've never unpacked cPanel's WP Toolkit, it should be free if you're on a cPanel host now. You already have it, but it has a brilliant tool called Smart Updates, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So it could make updating, those problematic sites that you have, where maybe it's WooCommerce and it's got 15 different WooCommerce plugins, and you're always kind of afraid to update it because something might happen. This is a great way to deal with those on a site-by-site basis. So we'll unpack that in just a minute when we dig into the cPanel settings. Backups, how does this work? Well, with Hosting.com's VPS and VDS servers, they're going to create an automatic daily backup using Backuply, which is a little icon in the cPanel, and they retain those for 30 days. So that it doesn't count against the storage space allocated on your server, depending on which level you pick. There's so much storage. Doesn't count against that. They keep those backups in the Hosting.com infrastructure for 30 days. So that's great. That's like it's there, and if I need it, I can roll it back. Or you can also, in addition to that, and I would probably recommend it, add your own backup solution on top of that, WordPress level backup, or your fill in the blank plugin that backs up WordPress. Any of those are going to work because it's your environment. You control what goes there. So that's hosting and backups. What about security? So just like Rocket.net, Hosting.com's VPS and VDS servers use Immuify 360. It's built in for malware scanning and patching in real time at the server level. And just like we mentioned with Rocket.net, it's going to stop malicious code as it's being executed or during a daily file scan of all the files on the server. And again, even if you bring in a site that has some malware in it already, it's going to clean up those infected files. Pretty amazing. They do offer free Let's Encrypt SSL certificate. I don't think I mentioned it under security under Rocket.net, or I skipped it, but they, of course, also give a free SSL certificate. If your host doesn't give a free SSL certificate today, change hosts, because, paying for SSL is very 2010. Anyway, so Let's Encrypt runs by default on these servers. You can also bring your own Cloudflare security rules and settings if you like to do that. That's going to work just like it does with your hosting now. And of course, cPanel's WP Toolkit also has a great little button to boost WordPress security. And I'll show you that in just a minute, actually right now. Let's look at what WP Toolkit does. Let me just do a quick poll in the chat. How many of you have used WP Toolkit? Are you using it regularly in your workflow? Just give me a yes or no. If you've never seen this before, it might just blow your mind. All right, so lots of no's, some yeses. Okay, so let's just take a quick peek, shall we? So here's our typical cPanel, and right here is WordPress management. Oh, you know what? I bet. I'm logged in another. I pulled over the wrong browser window. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, let's look at our cPanel for WP1. All right, here we go. So here's WP Toolkit. And let's just take a look at what we have. So let's look at security. So we'll slide this open, and wow, there are some things. Let's take a look at these unaddressed vulnerabilities. Well, you may know there's a vulnerability in core right now, and that's all showing up here. Yeah, it's a low level vulnerability. It's going to be patched. It's not a big deal. So all that's there, and that makes sense. Here's one that says unauthenticated blind server-side request. I'm not familiar with that one, but look right here. We have an option to apply the security measure that fixes it. Okay, so it's block access. Oh, this is the one that came up maybe 6-10 months ago. That's an XML RPC or pingback. So we can turn that on and mitigate that vulnerability right here. And WP Toolkit handles that. I have 2 WordPress sites in this cPanel, which is generally not the best practice. You want 1 per cPanel, but I've done it. I have 2 on here just to demonstrate something in a minute. So you can apply these security measures just right here. So this is just as good as what many WordPress security plugins are doing, but you're doing it through WP Toolkit at the server level. So let's take a look at what else we have here. When we hit security, now let's look at our security measures. So here, we'll just do this first site. There's a whole bunch of things that it has flagged. So we want to turn off execution of PHP and WP includes and WP content, disable concatenation of scripts, all the, disable file editing in the dashboard. That's, theme and plugin editors. So we can do all of this. Let's just look, we can just click all of these things that it's recommending. And you may recognize some of these settings from your favorite WordPress security plugin, but we can just do them right here in WP Toolkit. And it's now going to fix all of those issues on that site. So that's pretty cool. And that's built in to cPanel here as part of the hosting.com servers. So security, pretty nice. Do you have to do them one at a time? Yes. But here's the trick. If you are building your development sites in a cPanel, well, on the base site, the base stack that you use to replicate for future sites, you can just do them there once and then they're kind of all in place. Or it could be a part of your launch process to go in and just click these things. It takes like a minute, right? And it's done. So it's probably a good idea as part of your launch process to take a look at that. So let's look at all the things here that WP Toolkit is going to offer us per site. So let's dig into this first one. And there's a whole bunch of things here. The first thing I want to show you is the Smart Update. So down here under Updates, it'll look, oh, there's a few plugins. I just added these. These are a few plugins that are out of date. They're, a couple of versions out of date. I can turn on this Smart Update. And this is like, I probably wouldn't want to do this for, I'm managing 100 sites and every week going to every individual site. That's overkill. But for that one site that causes you problems where you got a bunch of WooCommerce add-ons, or Melanie mentioned a particular calendar plugin that might have issues on updates sometimes. We all have those sites that are a little bit fragile. Well, watch this. We'll turn on Smart Update and run our Smart Update test and test all of them and watch what's about to happen. It's going to test. Oh, look, it's creating a staging site right now in the background. And then it's going to take a look at that test site and make sure there's no errors. Then it's going to run the updates on that test site and let you know what happens at the end of the day. That's pretty darn cool. Now, this does take a minute, so I'm actually going to keep going here on something else. Now, let me get another cPanel window open here. Oops. That does take just a minute to, well, here, look, we're already almost there. So we'll just stick with this just for a second here. All right, so here's our results. We don't have any errors, warnings, broken shortcodes showing up, anything. So it's ready to go. All right, so it looks like we're not going to have any issues, and we can click Apply Updates. Now it's going to update all of those plugins on the live site. It's a pretty simple flow, and you could certainly do this manually by making a staging site, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But this just kind of does it for you. Boom, done right there. And that's all built into cPanel in the hosting.com servers. So something else you can do very easily here is staging and deployment. So let's say you've got a client site and you need to add some things, or test a plugin, or something's broken, you need to fork it and make a staging site to test something. Well, it's very, very easy to do that in WP Toolkit. So all you literally just go to clone, and it lets you set your settings here. So it autofills staging. We'll just leave that alone. So it's going to copy this site to staging. You have a bunch of other options you can go through here if you want, but we'll just click start. And it is now going to create that subdomain. It's going to copy all the files of the WordPress install, copy the database, update everything so it works, and you'll have a fully functioning staging site right here. And it's pretty quick. Now, granted, this is a very slim WordPress site. It's just the core install. So if you've got a big site with many things, it might take a little longer, but it goes pretty quickly in most cases. Kathy, thank you for that question. While we're waiting, Kathy's asking about documentation somewhere. I can do better than that for you. Right here, under best practices, you can learn all the things about cPanel at their free university.cpanel.net. And there's a whole course on WP Toolkit where they got videos and walk you through. Yeah, it's great. And this is free. You just create an account and you're good to go. University.cpanel.net. Pretty cool, right? All right, so we now have our staging site and it's up and working. Isn't that beautiful? Something else you can do is pushing and pulling from live to staging. How many of you knew you could do that with WP Toolkit? Right here, there's a little icon called Copy Data. So you can click this and look at the options. My source is source. My target is, you can pick any other WordPress install in the cPanel. And we can choose, do we want to just push the files over, the whole database only? Do we want to just do files that have been modified, or remove missing files? You get a big choice of what you want to do here. Let's just do database only. I want to show you something really quick. Okay, so let me target. So notice here that there's just the hello world post here on the target site. And over here on the source, there's this Ipsum text post. I just added a post on the source site. So let's just do a database copy. And I just happen to know that that's only going to impact the post and post meta tables, but I can choose which tables I want to push over. So I'm just going to do those. You can create a restore point to roll back if you want to, in case something goes wrong. But I'm just going to push the tables over from the staging site, as it were, to the live site. So it just pushes right over. Now, the caveat here, of course, is you forked the live site. So if your live site is a transactional site where people are buying things, or it's a course site where there's student progress and so forth, you're going to want to be real careful with using this, just like any other staging type site. This is an issue, a huge issue with WordPress that nobody's quite solved yet, of how to keep all that stuff in sync. You have to do kind of an import and export with something like WP All Export to do this. But what we just did, like in this case, let's just say you wanted to build a landing page on a staging site. Well, you could just push those two tables back over, and look, here's our target, and we refresh, and boom, our post is there because we pushed the database table over. So push and pull is built into this WP toolkit. It's very, very helpful. We talked already about addressing WordPress vulnerabilities, and there's a few other things here I want to show you. Most of them are right here. You do have quick access to the file manager here. You have, just like on Rocket.net, you have WP CLI window that pops in right here. You have the ability to turn on debug right here in WordPress, and you can choose what's turned on. Right here in WP Toolkit, you can turn on WordPress debugging. You can password protect the whole site if you'd like to, with a username and password. And that's going to be like an HTTP password that pops in, like in the browser. It's not a WordPress password. You can turn on and off the discourage search engines from indexing option in WordPress right here. We've already seen we're addressing vulnerabilities. This is really good also. Hot link protection. If people are stealing your images, you can toggle this on and protect all these file extensions. Even, for example, maybe you don't want the PDFs on your site indexed or linked directly to. You can add PDF as a file extension here and turn that on. Pretty helpful. This lets you make sure that your WordPress core is correct and its integrity is good, or you can reinstall WordPress core here. And right here, you even get a maintenance mode. So you can toggle this on, and this is a server level maintenance mode that looks like this. And if you want to change how this looks, you can click this button and you can customize right here. So this is the HTML that's being loaded for this coming soon page, and you can have your own customized one for the client if you want. So that is all from that little toggle, which is pretty cool. So you get a lot just right out of the box with WP Toolkit, and this is included in all the cPanel. If the VPS or VDS that you buy from hosting.com, this is built in to that server. Gene is asking, is that built into any cPanel? Yeah, it depends on if your host is giving you the premium WordPress toolkit or not. If they do, then this is part of WordPress toolkit. Yes. All right, I'm going to do a few little best practices, quick tips here, and then we'll get to questions, and we'll likely run over just a little bit here. So first thing out of the gate, I mentioned this earlier, but you want one WordPress site per cPanel install for security. A staging site, that's something that's different, but you don't want to stack a bunch of client sites in the same cPanel for security purposes, because if one of those sites gets hacked, then every site in that cPanel is also going to be hacked. I already mentioned cPanel University, super great resource there. As I have set up a couple of these virtual dedicated servers, I've learned that there are 3 quick requests that I make to support whenever one of these gets activated. And this is a quick thing, like you can do it in let me get to my hosting.com control panel, which I thought I was logged in on, but I'm apparently not. So I've got a lot. I have one of everything here just for demo purposes. There's a lot here. Yours won't be quite this full, but it's a very simple dashboard to navigate. And if you want to do a support chat, you just click right here. And so you can just quickly set up a chat if you go with one of these VPS or VDS offerings and ask them these three things, because these are three things that I always want to do when I activate my server. First, I want to turn on, and here you can just copy this request. Enable the Redis and PDF modules in the default PHP version. I like to use Redis for the Lightspeed object cache, and it needs to be turned on. And then I also ask them to enable cPanel's WP toolkit for all cPanels on the server. That's a quick thing. It takes like 2 minutes. It's done. And that's all you have to do. It's ready to go. Something else that I do, and this might be a fun little takeaway for anybody right now that's running their own WHM server. I'll create a custom feature list and a custom package for all the cPanels on the server. Let me show you what I mean by this. How many of you, when you open cPanel, there we go. So this is the cPanel for wpnathan.com. And there are so many things. It's like icon overkill, right? And if you open up cPanel, how many of these do you actually ever use? Maybe like 10, right? So there's so much here. But you can trim this back if you want to. And the easy way to do this is by, first of all, creating a custom feature list. So you can go here and just type features and go to feature manager. All this is in the instructions. And see, I've got this custom feature list. You can create a new one here. I'm just going to show you the one that I created that only has some things turned on. Now, if you want these, I've given you a screenshot right here of these settings that you can see what I've turned on and turned off. That's here in the doc in the screenshot link. But when you do this, it's going to hide all the icons that you don't want to use. Like, for example, we do not give clients email out of our server. So I don't want any of this stuff to show up. And there's a lot of other stuff here that we're not going to use. If you like it all, great, keep it. But we like to slim things down so that there's not icon overkill. So, just check on the few things that you want, and then you can save that as your package or as your feature set that you can then apply to a package for your cPanels. Let me show you what that looks like. Every server is going to have a default package set up, but let me show you. So here's the default one that comes, with the average cPanel. I've created a different one that has the settings that we use. And again, if you want to see the screenshot for that, it's here in the guide. But this is for the case where clients don't get access to cPanel. We have access to cPanel only as an agency. And there's just some stuff we don't want on. Like, I really don't care about disk space or bandwidth, but we don't use FTP accounts, period. That's a security issue. We'll use SFTP, which uses SSH. But regular standard FTP is a security issue. So we don't want any of those. We don't allow email. We don't do mailing lists. No limits on any of these things. We don't do apps through the cPanel. And then we turn off CGI. We don't want CGI. We don't use that. We do want shell access in case, like the backup solution we use needs shell access. And so we turn that on. And then I apply that feature, that custom feature list that I created to here, and then I'll save the changes. Now, when I get there, here, look at the difference. Here's the WP Nathan cPanel with all of the things. And here is the WP1, WP1.dev, which I now can't access. Hang on a second. No, let me go this way. It logged me out. The WP1.dev cPanel is so much slimmer. It just has a few things, just the things that we use. And it's just much easier to get around in. So I recommend doing that. You do it once, and then every site you set up, you just make sure, look at the difference here. Here's, what package are they on? And if I want to change this site to the different package, I can just change the plan and make it the Nathan one. And now my Nathan's cPanel should be slimmed down too. It locked me out because I opened the other cPanel. My Nathan cPanel will be slimmed down and look like the other one at this point because we changed the package. Yeah, much simpler. All right, so if this sounds interesting to you, my advice is to reach out to Mike Demo and just talk about it. Mike Demo has done agency work. He understands the needs that we have, and basically just have a conversation. You can book him at this link or use the QR code here, or just give him a call. And he'll find some time to chat with you about what your needs are and help you figure out what right hosting solution is for you. All right, we went a long way in the last hour. It is right at the top of the hour, and we still have a bunch of great questions in the queue. So I'm going to drop in our resources once again. If you missed the download, it is there now in the chat. And I am going to stop sharing and try to answer some questions. Let me invite everybody, if you will, please, to open up the Zoom Q&A if you've not done that already, and just kind of scan down the list and upvote any of the questions that you would like to have answered, and we'll get to those with the most upvotes. Probably won't be able to get to all of these. And if we don't get to your question, that's why we have office hours every day. So, pardon me, every week. So every Thursday at the same time, it's open office hours. You can ask whatever you would like. And if you'd like to register for that, you can do so at the links are right there in the chat to register for our upcoming live streams. Okay. So let me start with the number of upvotes, which is Chris. Chris has a great question here. Do you advise against the reseller hosting option? Okay, so that's a marketing term, and it depends on what the particular company that's offering a reseller option has that's powering it from a tech perspective, right? So for many companies that offer a reseller option, it's really just shared hosting. It's shared hosting that you have control over to resell yourself. And honestly, if you're doing agency work and you're building professional websites should not live on shared hosting. That's for, there's a time and a place for shared hosting. It's for grandma's cat blog and my mom's blog about her dog. Like that, those belong on shared hosting. Legitimate businesses should not be on shared hosting for a lot of reasons, for speed and for things like, all the accounts on a shared server share the same IP address. Thousands of websites share the same IP address that sites in a shared environment have. And it's going to be a problem because if one of those sites misbehaves and gets blacklisted, everybody's site is blacklisted. It's just a problem. So when you're architecting a hosting solution that's going to be best for your clients, again, it depends on what they mean by reseller hosting. But my advice is invest in a virtual dedicated or virtual private server with hosting.com. That's what I did. And just put all your client sites there, period. And it's done. And that way you're collecting the monthly revenue, not the hosting company. Chris is talking about A2's reseller plans. So I'm not sure, does hosting.com still offer a reseller plan? I don't know. You may have, I know that A2 did a long time ago. So hosting.com does still offer a reseller plan. I'm looking at it now, and I'm not familiar with it. I just wouldn't recommend that as what I would do. I would definitely get your own server that has you have some allocated hardware to you, and you're not going to have issues. So that's what I would recommend. Is that fair enough, Chris? That's a great question. And if you need more detail, you can reach out to Mike Demo and he can help you with that. All right. Anne had a similar question, the difference between reseller and virtual options. I think we covered most of that, Anne. If there's some nuance of that you want to mention, could you just stick it in the chat? I'm going to go to the next question, and I'll come back if there's any nuance that's different that you want covered. Actually, let me answer it this way. I'm not sure how the architecture behind the reseller hosting at hosting.com works, but if you go with one of the virtual options, you have a guaranteed set of resources, and you're going to have your own IP address for your sites that only your VPS has or only your VDS has. And it's just going to be a more sustainable system going forward. And how much technology you need? Same. Yeah. Same. Great. Thanks for that. And if there's any other nuance, just drop it in the chat and I'll come back to it. Melanie, what are the specs of a VPS for 100 sites? So I went with the VD. I'll just show you which one that I went with. It is the base level VDS. 24 CPU cores, 64 gigs of RAM, 800 gigs of NVMe storage, and all of this, right? So this has been fabulous. Matter of fact, one of the things that Chris from my team, who I think is here in the chat, one of the things that Chris noted immediately was that when we were running updates out of our dashboard that does our multi-site dashboard, it was so fast. It was significantly faster than it was before, just because the hardware's better. Yeah, the hardware's better. All right, next question is from Sue. How do you determine the optimal, this is a great question. The optimal number of accounts on a VPS. Likewise, how do you know when it would be beneficial to move to a higher resource consuming site like a Woo site to its own hosting rather than include it with other static sites on a VPS? It's a great question, Sue. And like any question you would ask an attorney, the answer is it depends, right? It depends on the sites. It depends on how much, just like with one page load, what resources is that site consuming, right? Like how complicated is it? What's running in the background? What's, is it high traffic or low traffic? And what's happening there? Are there 80 images on a page or one? So there's no rule of thumb that I could really give you on that. What I would say is you can look at, like if you're in a VPS right now, you can look at the resource monitor on the server. You ought to have access to that. It's in WHM and you can see what's going on. That's the kind of thing that would be that's where Mike Demo could come and have a great conversation with you about here's probably the good fit for where you are with the resource usage that you currently have. Yeah. And if you start to see that one site is consuming a lot of resources, that might be a great case to push it off to rocket.net on its own, right? Because maybe it needs a higher hosting level. Yeah. So Sue, if you have a dedicated server with Cloudways, there ought to be some sort of resource manager or something that lets you see how much you're using. What's the average RAM use, your average CPU spikes, those sorts of things. Vern is next. You might cover this in a few minutes. I'm confused by the term virtual dedicated server. Great question. Okay. So what is a virtual dedicated server? That was a new term for me up until several months ago when we were looking at hosting options to replace our current server. So it's not, I used to have a dedicated server, not a virtual dedicated server. And that was like a box. It was a box in a data center and that belonged to me, basically. Virtual dedicated server isn't like that. It's like, and I'm going to explain this in a way that I think will be clear, but it might be so oversimplified that it's wrong. Is that fair? So basically, if you take the software that's running on a dedicated server, okay, and all the things, if you have your own resources and whatever, take that software and that's kind of virtualized and it's set on top of a whole network of CPUs and RAM infrastructure, right? So that you can swap out all the hardware without affecting the software layer. And that's oversimplified to the point of almost being wrong, but that's basically what's going on. Does that make sense, Vern? So the virtual part means, like I described earlier, it's sitting on top of hardware that they're refreshing on a regular basis. So I don't know if you'd call it a virtual machine. That's a great question for somebody smarter than me. But yeah, it is the way to go. If I'm an agency, this is what I want to do because the chances of us ever having to move our server again are low because the hardware is just going to be continually upgraded. It's great. Taj, how do we provide an admin area for those we host? We assume it will be white label with our brand. So Taj, it depends on what you mean by admin area, Taj. Do you mean like a place where they can see their account and that sort of thing? I'm assuming that's, okay, yeah. So it depends on how you want to structure your care plan with your client. So for us, the clients don't have an admin area. This is a very long answer because it's kind of describing the whole system of how we do things. But in short, the clients are billed on a monthly basis through their credit card and they get a receipt. That's really all they ever want or need. A lot of times we feel like we have to provide, like as as I've worked with people in coaching conversations, there's a feeling among us that we have to provide all these things like an integrated dashboard with all their stuff and a billing history and all of this. And I've never once had a client ask for that ever in 30 years of doing this. So yeah, we don't offer that. If you want to offer that, there are things out there like WHMCS, which can be added to a WHM server. And that's something to have a conversation with hosting.com about. And the same answer, Taj, for tech support. We use a help desk. It's an app that doesn't live on our server. And I recommend that. And there's 100,000 different ticket apps, and they're all basically the same. Pick one that's at the right price point and the one that you hate the least, basically, and use that one. But don't put it on your server. I don't recommend that, because if something happens to the server, your ticket system's down too. So, we use a SaaS for that to manage client tickets. It lives offsite. And that way, if there's a problem with the server, the clients can still put in support requests. Great questions. Next up is Joe. I recently read where one of your hosting clients' resellers lost customers due to substantial server downtime issues. I don't know anything about that, Joe. That sounds like a very isolated case to me. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. That would, my suggestion would be, if you're interested in hosting.com services, that'd be a great thing to talk to your hosting advocate about. Mike Demo, and his contact information is there in the guide. Doug is next. What are the differences between VPS and VDS? I think we answered that, Doug. Taj, do you have a payment collection system that is white label so we can send invoices and late notices? That's not built into any of the servers, Taj, but that is something that WHMCS would do. It does all of that. Billy, my clients are mostly advocacy nonprofits in Canada. They're concerned with preventing government access to sensitive information and being labeled terrorist. Interesting. Is there any way to assure data independence in any U.S. hosting? Billy, that is beyond my pay grade. I do not know the answer to that question. If somebody does, please drop it in the chat. It sounds like if that is a key issue for your clients, you might want a Canadian-based host. Corey, do we have data centers in Canada? I don't think that's one of our options. I know Corey Miller is here somewhere. Corey, if you know that answer and you can answer in the chat, that'd be great. Stacy, what type of tech support does hosting.com have for fully managed VPS? I mentioned in the guide, I think this came in before we got to that point in the guide. Hosting.com has phone, chat, and ticket support. Yep. And the chat support is just right here, right in your panel. Corey, we were wondering if there was a data center in Canada for hosting.com for Canadian privacy regulations. Yeah, Corey, Billy says there's one in Toronto. That's awesome. Corey's going to check for us. Taj, how do we collect payment from clients? We talked about that a little bit. If you want something automated, you can use WHMCS. For me, I set up a Stripe account, and I have the client. It's part of our process of onboarding a client. We put a card in, and it bills automatically. Sherry, what about the 4 pillars of security? Separate email, hosting, Cloudflare, registrar. If Cloudflare is part of hosting, doesn't that break a pillar, or are things different now? I mean, that is a complicated question. Let's talk about that in office hours, Sherry. That's going to be more than I can get into here. Okay, if you'll ask that in office hours, we'll try to unpack that a little more. Stacy says she's looked at hosting.com, VPS, and VDS. They all say include cPanel Solo. How do you segment sites? Okay, so as part of the pricing package that Mike Demo will come up with you, you'll look at a cPanel licensing package that's on top of the cost of the server, depending on how many sites you have. They could bundle in a bunch of licenses, but some people may not need that many. So the pricing is based on cPanel Solo. That's one cPanel, but then you can add cPanel licensing on top of that. Okay, we're gonna have to wrap it up here. I'm gonna answer one final question in the chat. And by the way, if your question didn't get answered, please come back on Thursday and ask it during office hours, because we're already 15 minutes overtime here. Please ask it during office hours, and I will do my very best to get to that on Thursday. Murad is asking, moving from reseller to VPS will fix any malware on the website. So when I mentioned that, here's what I was talking about. Both managed WordPress hosting by Rocket.net and the VPS and VDS offerings from hosting.com, both of them include at the server level Immunify 360. Part of what it does is go through and clean malware, both actively running processes and file level malware scanning. Now, the missing piece of this is it will clean anything that's infected. However, if there is some vulnerable thing in your website that's, it's not going to fix a vulnerability necessarily. Like say there's a plugin out of date and that attacker just comes back in and remalwares your site for you, right? It can't fix that, obviously. You'll have to close the door that was causing the infection, but it will clean up the malware that exists in the files. So is that fair, Murad? Corey is going to get back to us on the data center in Canada. We'll have that answer in office hours on Thursday. All right, y'all, we've gone a long way today. I'm ready for a nap. Hopefully this has been helpful. Let me drop in a couple of resources here. If you missed the download today, the Agency Success Blueprint Guide is there in the chat. I'm also going to drop in our link bundle of all the things that includes our upcoming live streams, link to the replays, and joining us in Slack and getting our agency success update. So all those links are there for you in the chat. If you're watching this on the replay on YouTube and you want to get access to that download, go to downloads.myagencysuccess.com and you'll see a whole folder full of all of the downloads for our live streams. Well, thanks for hanging out with me for the last hour and 15 minutes. Hopefully it's been fun and a good use of your time. We'll see you back here next time on My Agency Success with hosting.com, where we go further together.